There's one feature of a man's face that comes into fashion every now and then. That is that little 11 o'clock shadow or stubble that shows up. And quite a few of the young people in Times Square display that little stubble. Maybe we'll see it here. We'll see it in this guy here. Little stubble right there. That's what we're going to cover in this tutorial. How to create this little bit of a peach fuzz on the areas of the chin and under the nose. Looking at the layers, we see that, of course, at the top is the comp layer that has taken all the layers and put them into a single layer to be transported into another file. But we come down here and let's start closing some of these folders. And right here, we see that we have, right above the head, being clipped by the head, we have the fuzz shadow and the fuzz. So take off the fuzz shadow, and that's that dark tone, and then the fuzz, and you see that it's a nice, clean, smooth face. Now, they both have masks, as you can see. So let's go in here and create this look. In fact, we'll do it right here on this face. So I'm going to take these two away. They no longer exist. We're going to create our own. So the first one I'm going to do is right on top of here, we're going to call this the shadow. FS for the fuzz shadow, just like here. What I'm going to do in this layer is I'm just going to take black and a paintbrush that's really nice and soft and large. Go even bigger. There we go. That's a nice big size. I'm going to draw in here, and I'm going to lower the opacity right off the bat so it won't be so strong. I'm going to throw in there some tones, and I'm going to make sure that there's no activity at all on the brush except a straight brush. Make it a little bigger. I'm just going to start to draw some grays in these areas here, right in through there. And you notice that it's being clipped. That's because if you noticed when it was created, it's automatically being clipped by the face. Right, so I'm going to go in here and just going to draw some tones right where I want these tones to appear. Right through here. Nice big darker tones right in there. So there's our basic fuzz, right? This is the shadow of the fuzz. So I'm going to bring down the opacity for that considerably. So it's just this little hint of the shadow. And there's certain areas where I might want to lighten it up a little bit. So there's where the mask comes in. So I created a mask, and using that same brush with the same opacity, I'm going to very lightly touch certain areas that I want to lighten up. I'm going to go in here, reduce that opacity even more to about 20%, and just very lightly hit certain areas that I want to lighten it up and kind of shape it right about there like that. So there we have that shadow there, that fuzz, right? So now, on top of that, we're going to create the stubble. In fact, we'll call it stubble. So I'm going to create a selection right there for that area of the stubble, and I'm going to fill that with any color, white or black, in this case white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it noise. Give it a lot of noise. Add noise. Whole lot of noise. Make it even stronger. Click OK. Now, let's get in close on this noise. It's just a bunch of black and white noise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a little bit of gray by giving it just a little blur. Just a blur. That will introduce a little gray into that fuzz, which will allow me to then go into levels and reduce that noise. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to start pulling these things down, bring them way down to about like that. See, I'm going to bring my whites in. So you see I'm getting the stronger whites and the really strong blacks. Bring it way down, about like that. Click OK, and there it's created that. Now, it's still not enough, so I'm going to blur it again, just a little, introduce more grays, and go into that adjustments one more time, into levels. Now, if this was a low-res file, you wouldn't have to do this second step, but since this is a very high-res file, I'm going to have to do it in a couple of steps. So here I'm going to go in again, and I'm going to push in my blacks. So that's going to minimize the amount of black, making the whites a little more visible. So there we go, and I'm getting those whites very strong now, bringing them in, and bringing those blacks down. Click OK, and there we can see that we're starting to minimize the amount of noise that we have there. And we'll try it one last time. Again, we'll blur it to introduce some grays. Those grays allow us to go in there and really manipulate it. In fact, we'll do the blur twice. And then we'll go back in one more time to our levels and really push those blacks all the way down. See, now we really got it toned down. And then we bring those whites in, and maybe we'll bring back some of those blacks. There we go. Click OK, and there. Now we have this effect going on here, which I am now going to take that layer, and I'm going to invert it. So I go in there, and I'll say invert, so that now you notice that the dots are black, and the rest is white, because we wanted to emphasize the dots. And since we were toning down the dots, we were increasing the black and making the dots white. Where what we really want is black dots. So now that we have this, I'm going to change the mode of that layer to multiply. And there's our little stubble, which I can now pull back, and we can deselect it, and I will give the stubble a mask as well. And now that I have this mask, I can select the entire area, like right up here. We'll just select this whole area right through here and in here, and just immediately fill that with black. To have this foreground color, so I'll just, in the mask, I'll just go ahead and fill that with 100% of the black. The foreground color at 100% normal, and there, completely disappeared in that area. So now, with the paintbrush, with a lowered opacity and a smaller size, I'm going to slowly start to soften up that stubble and get rid of it in places I don't want it, and just slowly start to shape the stubble into the area of the face where I want it. Get rid of it in places I don't. But you notice that since I'm not working with a fully opaque brush, I'm doing it gradually. As I applied brush strokes, I'm just getting rid of it in certain areas more than others, and soft. It's a soft transition that I want to get. I don't want to immediately make it disappear. I want to soften it. So I'm slowly doing it, changing the size of my brush where I need to, and I'm just going in there and slowly eliminating the parts of the stubble that I don't want, leaving behind just the area that I wanted. And there we have this unshaven young man, the way it should look.